Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first of our introductions to board members of Restorative Practices International. I'm Marg Thorsborn. I am current chair of the board, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Jo Wailling, newly named because of her PhD, but we'll get to that in a minute. So good morning, Jo.
Morning from New Zealand.
Yes. So we have a series of questions that all our board members will be asked, but I want to start with Jo because you have a very distinct British accent. So what brought you to New Zealand?
What brought me to New Zealand? Oh, that's a long question, Mark. I lived in this part of the world when I was a kid. I went to school in Manly in Sydney for a bit when we first came to New Zealand then. And I remember eating a big bag of kiwis by the side of the road and thinking it was a very beautiful place. And then we came back a few years, or about 15 years ago now. My husband and I, and just still was in love with New Zealand. So we emigrated almost 12 years ago with our children to Whakaori Masterton, which is in the bottom of North Island, just over what's called a hill from Wellington, which is actually a massive great mountain range, which was quite terrifying for me as a little English motorway driver to go over the first time. So that's what brought us here.
Yes, well, I've done that drive times myself, and I can share your terror around that. So things have improved over time. And I should also just explain to our members who will be hopefully watching this video that our board is currently distributed between Australian membership and New Zealand membership. So it's lovely to be working with our New Zealand colleagues. So Jo, I know that you have a story about what brought you to restorative work. So would you like to share that?
Thanks, Mark. So what brought me to restorative work was my background is in nursing. I qualified as a nurse a long time ago. I've been nursing since I was 16 years old. And I've had various different roles in intensive care units, emergency departments, and later in safety. And one of the things that has really troubled me is that when things go wrong, and they do go wrong quite a lot of the time, because healthcare is a very risky business, risky environment. So 1 in 10 patients is harmed during the course of their healthcare treatment. That the impacts on the people who are involved, the patients, families, and their whānau, and also the clinicians, the organisation, was something that really troubled me because I felt that we were responding in a way that was at odds with what brings us to healthcare, which is, caring for people, involving them in decision making, thinking about trauma-informed processes, the connection between psychological and physical well-being, all of those things. So that sort of troubled me somewhat. And then a colleague of mine gave medication to a patient who later died from what we call a medication error. So it was the wrong medication, and the impact on her was really significant. So I've been involved in an incident myself as a clinician where a patient was harmed in a team environment in the ICU, and we endured quite a lengthy investigation that was very punitive, and we had no voice in it, and it had quite a lasting impact, and a lot of us left the organisation. And as well as that, I've been involved on the other side of that as patient and as a member of a family member of someone who's been harmed and someone who's died during the course of their healthcare treatment. So taken from all of those experiences, my sense was that they're deeply traumatizing and difficult, and that the way that we respond is at odds with the values of the healthcare professions and organisations in terms of dignity, care, respect, safety, etc. And then when I came to New Zealand, my director of nursing introduced me to restorative practices when I was working in a very challenging workplace environment. I was responsible for an emergency department, and we used some circle processes for bullying, well, not for bullying, to explore bullying. And I just thought, wow, this is incredible, and that kind of piqued my interest really. And then I wrote a PhD proposal around how we might use restorative principles and practices in response to adverse events. So those are events that lead to unintended, unanticipated death or disability. And then around the same time, I was fortunate enough to meet Professor Chris Marshall and the Chief Medical Officer of New Zealand. And we undertook a national inquiry, which was co-designed with the Ministry of Health and consumer advocates, and a team of incredible restorative facilitators. And we responded using circles and story databases in order to explore what had happened to women who'd had this surgical device implanted inside them that had devastating impacts, life-changing impacts on them, and what they needed to move forward, and then how the different health agencies might collaborate to make improvements for the future. So that's kind of like
the story about the mesh. Is that right?
Yeah.
So my understanding is that became the topic of your PhD. Was it? Was it
so yeah, so there's a sort of a layered piece of research that influenced my thesis. So the first bit was really thinking about the fact that current processes or embedded processes, the way we respond globally to harm, are very focused on how we learn and improve our systems, and that there is a gap between how harm is imagined to occur and how it is experienced. So that was kind of like the foundational piece. Then we did a evaluation on the Ministry of Health project, and that looked at, did we meet people's procedural and psychological and substantive needs through that response? And we found that we met people's procedural needs in ways that current responses do not. It surfaced the compounding impacts of the current system. But it also, because it involved stakeholders from all those different agencies, because they sat and listened to those impacts, it also intrinsically motivated them to change. So there was those two pieces. And then my PhD looked at how do restorative responses to adverse events work, and who do they work for across the New Zealand health and disability system. So yes, looking at the data from the MESH project and the experiences of those individuals, but also testing ideas and theories about what works and for whom more broadly within the system. So that was the sort of the layering of the academic piece that sat alongside the practice piece.
Yeah. So in the training I do, and you know that I mostly work in education, but workplaces in general, we talk about this idea of satisfaction, of going through some sort of restorative process, and we talk about procedural satisfaction, emotional satisfaction, and then substantive. So, you know, in the case of harm that's been done that can't be undone, then the planning, the substantive piece is always about the future, isn't it? So how can systems change and protocols change and mindsets change about that? So, so what drives your work now, Jo, after that extraordinary experience of both the project and then writing it up in your PhD?
Well, one of the joys of being a sort of clinician practitioner, if you like, academic, and having feet in different camps, is that you get to sort of share the emergent knowledge from practice, build it into theories and ideas, and then bring it back and forth and so on. So it's a constant kind of dance. Following on from the MESH project, we founded the National Collaborative for Restorative Initiatives in Health with various member agencies. So that was the Ministry, the Health Quality Safety Commission, and Accident Compensation Commission. And we also had lived experience voices from patient, family and clinician expective, and co-martyr and queer, who are elderly elders, here Māori elders. And I have a Māori co-chair who I partner with in that work. So we've gone on to shape ideas around what a restorative health system might look like. We've written a pathway document which was co-designed over 18 months, and that incorporates like my ideas from practice and my ideas from academia, but also it's like the whole collective. It's not just about me, it's like all of those different voices, bringing them together. It's a joint commitment that we've made to each other through mahi tahi, so sharing risk and opportunity, and from that there has been a shift in our policy and legislation. So restorative responses, so restorative practice and hoho torongo, which is peacemaking from Te Ao Māori worldview, are now a requirement of in our national best events policy, in the Mental Health Act, and in our health and disability standards. So we've trained an awful lot of people working in healthcare, with a focus being very much in mental health, which is a area where I think this work really is important to have roots, because they understand biological practices, they understand trauma-informed care. So you're building on skills that are already there. So I've done those sorts of pieces, and now I'm working also kind of internationally with governments, organisations, clinicians, researchers across the world who are working to grow and develop restorative approaches in their own healthcare systems. And that's a joy, because we all come together and share our what's working and what's not, and learn from each other.
Yes, absolutely, because first of all, we can't rely on the train and hope model for bringing about the sorts of changes that we're all chasing. But Jo, you mentioned something about a joy, and I wanted to ask you, because the work is exhausting. So Jo, talk about what helps you keep your head above water, and what brings you the greatest joy in this work.
Well, I think, we take it back to what is foundationally important in restorative work, and that's the idea of whanangatanga, of connection through relationships, and that those relationships being dignifying and supportive in our everyday. And if we have a really strong foundational base in that, then it makes it much easier for us to bounce back when things go wrong. I think it's also, though, really important when we're thinking about this work, particularly the work that we do around, there's a lot of deaths of children, of loved ones, in an environment where people didn't imagine it would even be a possibility, because they are unintended, unexpected, unplanned deaths that lead to adverse events. I think it's also about creating space for yourself. So there's only so much of that you can actually do without having some time to yourself to recover and restore yourself. So for me, this is about systems. So how do we develop and nurture systems so that we have enough people to be able to do this work and support this work, rather than relying on a small group of people. I found the MESH project in particular was deeply challenging to sit in. The pain and trauma that the people shared with us, and I wouldn't in any way want to take away from their suffering, but actually witnessing that suffering over a prolonged period, and there's evidence about this, is actually really can be quite distressing. So I have supervision, I have team support, but really it's also about those fundamental things about what's important, how do we stay connected in our own lives as well as in our work, because we give so much of ourselves to this work. So that would be my thinking around that. Good question, Marg.
Yeah. And look, the work that you do is kind of, I would describe as pretty heavy. And so I'd like to finish our lovely interview here with some more light-hearted stuff. So I just had a picture of you sitting somewhere eating a bag of kiwi fruit as a young person. So what's your favourite part of New Zealand? Which part of New Zealand do you love the best? I know it's really hard because I know I love everywhere in New Zealand, but what draws you?
I think my favourite part of New Zealand is probably Te Moanao-a-Toi, Tauranga, which is where they have plenty, which is where my co-chair colleague Graham Cameron is from. And the reason I love that is because we go there a lot on holiday, and it's a great combination of like stunning beaches, kind of edgy stuff going on in town. Kids can go surfing, those sorts of things. So yeah, I really love it up there, and it kind of reminds me of my Italian roots. It's being on the beach, fresh fish, family space.
Wonderful, wonderful. And finally, what's your favourite meal?
My favourite meal, it's probably antipasti, because it reminds me of sitting on the coast, the Amalfi Coast, which is where my family is from in Italy, with my husband on our honeymoon. We just sat at that constantly.
Yeah. So good food is always a source of joy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Jo. Look, you and I have only been connected, vaguely to start with, and more intensively in the last 12 months or so. So what a delight to, dig inside that wonderful head of yours and understand a little bit more about the work you do. So thank you so much. And all the best, and we will see you very soon. Again, no doubt at the next board meeting. All right, so thanks,
Marg. It was lovely chatting. Take care.